Hello and welcome everyone to our session on understanding HR trends and how to prioritize them on your HR roadmap. My name is Stephanie Austri and I'm the marketing manager here at HR Strategies Consulting. We certainly appreciate you taking the time today to join us for this session. Before we get started, I'd just like to take care of a couple of quick housekeeping items. So if you have any questions over the course of the presentation, please add them to the Q&A and we will address them. If we don't address them during the presentation, we are saving some time at the end and can talk to any questions you may have then. We are also planning to share both a recording of this session and a copy of the slide deck later this week. So let's get started. So I'd like to start by introducing my co-presenter today, and that's Dan Whitmarsh. Dan is a solutions engineer here at HR Strategies Consulting. He has over 20 years experience helping clients achieve positive business outcomes through employee engagement initiatives, talent management process re-engineering, and adoption of HR technologies. On a more personal note, I've been lucky enough to work with Dan for about 8 years and am happy to vouch for both his wisdom and his insightfulness. So for today's session, our plan is to give a brief intro to HR strategies. Then we'll go through our process of identifying the top themes and go through each of those identified trends briefly. We'll also undertake a prioritization exercise to help determine what these trends can mean for you and your business. And then finally, we'll go through some next steps and, as I said, leave some time for questions at the end. So let's get started. So HR Strategies Consulting, our mission is to optimize the HR journey for our clients as they tackle how to recruit, engage with, pay, develop, lead, retain, and transition employees. So we have deep HR subject matter expertise combined with extensive HR technology implementation and change management experience. We have essentially two lines of business with our human capital management practice that focuses on addressing the top HR issues facing firms today when it comes to strategy, talent management, organizational effectiveness, et cetera. Our HR information technology practice, we ensure you get the most from your HR technology investments by developing HR technology roadmaps, helping with system selection, implementation, et cetera. We have a unique mix of products and services that deliver full-scale, comprehensive, and innovative end-to-end solutions that solve business challenges. So I think that's enough about us, and let's get into our process for identifying the top trends. I'm sure it comes as no big surprise that we started by searching for what we could find in terms of what all the other industry experts have been saying about 2020 and what's on the horizon for HR. So that involved looking at articles, studies, surveys, and other resources. Once we had identified those key resources for review, and on this slide you can see some of the logos associated with many of those resources, we then underwent a review exercise. As we reviewed the materials, we identified those recurring themes throughout. And then finally, we took the results from all the individual reviews and consolidated the data to get that overall picture. So this is the result of what we identified as the top HR themes, and there are 12 of them that we'll go through now in alphabetical order. So artificial intelligence, change HR, diversity and inclusion, health and safety, wellness, human experience management or HXM, job role transformation, learning and development, measurement, other, which is comprised of a few different things, performance management, recruiting, and finally, workforce planning. And this is a chart of those same 12 themes, but in order of magnitude. So as you can see, change HR and other were the most frequently recurring and talked about. But learning and development and human experience management also came up a lot. So with the other, we will take a look at what that's comprised of at the very end. So with that, Dan is going to take us through a brief overview of each of the themes. So take it away, Dan.
Thanks, Stephanie, appreciate it. So let me just take control here of the ball and share my screen with you and put up the PowerPoint. So to recap just quickly on, oh, sorry, I meant to start from where we left off. To recap from where Stephanie had brought us to, it was a real interesting journey. We felt it was much more valuable to get on this platform today and talk to you not about what we thought was important or what an individual company or an individual analyst house thought was important, but rather analyze all of the trends across all of the analysts and bring them together. And I think, Stephanie, if I'm not mistaken, there was well over 40 kind of articles and themed into 178 or so different types of items that we kind of condensed down or distilled down to those 12 themes that we're going to talk about today. So there was a great deal of research put into finding out what the trends are, but then you'll see when we get to the end, what those trends are to the industry analysts and to us may not be so relevant to you. So I'm going to walk through the individual trends one at a time here. Let's start alphabetically. Okay, artificial intelligence. And I mean, here we are, 2021, no surprise that this one should be on the list. You know, we're clearly into the future where, you know, the first line of contact with most platforms is usually a bot or some type of AI tool. And people are expecting world-class experiences 24/7. You know, they don't want to be 9-to-5ers anymore. They want to do things at their time and their pace. So leveraging technology can be a real cost saver, and it can be a real smart, non-judgmental way to engage users in anything from storefronts right through to job searches. You know, at a deeper level, when we look at the key highlights of what came out of the AI bucket, you know, non-judgmental AI can be a significant tool to help reduce bias and discrimination in the workplace during recruitment and performance management cycles. And even deeper than that, we're seeing the leveraging of AI tools right now to help with data and analytics. So wherever you're collecting data from all phases of the HR and talent management cycle, there is the application of AI to come in to analyze your data and look for trends that the human eye might not pick up, or just expedite the process of pointing you in the right direction. So the second item that we wanted to talk about is change HR. And this was a really big bucket. It kind of has 4 different capacities to it. And Stephanie did a great job at documenting this into a little pie chart. The first of the 4 is really around HR strategy and rethinking, you know, what, you know, we continually used to fight for a seat at the C-level table as HR executives. Now we're actually changing the way we're doing this, and we're looking and trying to find ways to contribute and be a business partner at the C-level table. So, you know, when we talked about these things, HR is being asked to align business objectives. So we're managing people to help companies meet their goals and setting up connections between corporate goals and HR programs that didn't really exist before in the old days, where we had siloed programs that were just a mandatory part of the HR function. And then finally, the last 2 bullets here were really around the use of technology. You know, managing sophisticated technology that connects not just to HR functions, but sometimes to customer analytics or sales analytics is becoming part of the HR portfolio. So they're having to adopt to new things. And then finally, managing the softer side of HR, the change management portion of this. How do we usher these practices into a culture that might not be accepting or ready to make a transition into the digital era? So The next topic we had on our list was diversity and inclusion. And this one did surprise me personally. I've always really valued working with unique varieties of people and learning from them. But now, and more than ever, rightfully so, business leaders are really cognizant of the positive impact that diverse and inclusivity can have on a work culture and an organization's success. It kind of reminds me of one of my favorite icons in the industry, a Welsh poet and business consultant, which is an odd combination, named David White. And he used to tell this story about the big analyst houses, the big consulting firms going out and looking for people who had, incredible work experiences and great broad educational accomplishments, and then unique hobbies and interests. And they had all of these great things. And then they hire them into their programs and offices, and they make them do the same thing over and over again, pretty much ignoring all their great experiences and worldliness. And that's the wrong way to tackle bringing diversity and inclusion into the workforce. And surely innovation comes naturally to organizations who really embrace diverse and inclusive workforces. So lots to consider there.
And so, Dan, just before you move on, so
Yes.
if we can go back to the diversity slide. So there was a comment in the chat about that someone mentioned being surprised that it was as far down in the list given all that has taken place in 2020. And I would just say that as part of our review, diversity and inclusion did come up in multiple different areas. So of the other themes, it was really specific to these were articles or surveys, studies, whatever, that were very specific to diversity and inclusion. So it's a little bit deceiving, perhaps, from that chart where it fell, but it is a very common theme that people are talking about today.
Yeah, definitely. You're right, Stephanie. There's a lot of touch points between these categories. They overlapped, and we will definitely, cross paths with each of the categories as we discuss each individual category. Good point. Okay, let's move on here. Health and safety and wellness. And this was a big one. Again, we kind of broke this into 3 sections of mental health, wellness, and workplace health and safety security. So let's talk about workplace health, safety, security first, which really speaks to just making sure that your employees are protected from hazards or danger. And obviously, this has become a global concern with the current pandemic. And in short, employees who don't feel secure or safe at work can't contribute at their best. So nor should they be expected to sacrifice their health for an organization's profits. When we talked about this, I mean, that obviously connects directly to their mental health. It's also become a front burner issue as workforces are dealing with many new items that they didn't have to before. I mean, we may be managing homeschooling, the job loss of a significant other, or maybe even managing care for seniors who might be in, unfortunately, a COVID-infested nursing home of some sort. So there's lots at play that's really consuming the mental capacity of our employees, and we need to be mindful of that. The third portion of this is around wellness, which obviously is tied to mental health. In the past, wellness was traditionally kind of looked at as a, let's say, a luxury benefit almost. And now it's more than that. It's a check-in. It's making sure that you're doing okay. And this is a big part of the conversation that needs to unfold between managers and employees on a day-to-day basis. So these are really important facets to health and safety as well. And I guess technically we could have called this benefits at the same time, right, Stephanie? So let's talk about this one. This is one of my favorites, human experience management, that Stephanie introduced to us a little while ago. Most of us are very likely familiar with human capital management. That seems to be a handle that's put on the space for quite some time now. But recently we've elevated this to kind of human experience management. Let's face it, our first experience and interactions at work these days are likely logging into Zoom meetings or platforms, not logging or not meeting face-to-face with people and talking like we did in days gone by. Making this interaction with technology and platforms an experience and not an encounter can really make adoption and usage significant. Because if a user can't manage the interface and it doesn't engage them, they just don't want to go there and they don't want to get that work done, or it becomes a painful part of their job. And they'll loathe those moments at work and involved in those terrible encounters and not experiences. Applications and platforms are really changing things. We've done so much to deliver cultural nuances through technology just by reiterating brand wherever possible or talking about missions. There will be more on mission statements in a few slides from now. The other big facets of this are really around personalization, allowing the end user to set up things the way that they want to do this so they can get their dashboards, feeds, screens, and landing pages to contain all the information that's relevant for them and how they need to get their work done. So everybody gets their own view of the information. And finally, it's around digitalization. It's really enabled us to take transactions and push them out to the desktops of our users, right? So human experience management is really prevalent. In fact, there's a lot of interesting research that's growing out since the pandemic has hit that demonstrates that companies who put these practices in place prior to the pandemic, when everybody was forced to moving from home or working from home, sorry, have grown significantly compared to those who just didn't have a digitalized and personal footprint or interactive human experience management program in place. So moving on, Stephanie, and you're monitoring the chat in case there's comments or questions as we go through. Is that fair?
Yes, I am.
Awesome, thank you. So as we talked about kind of changing what an organization might deliver to its employees, we really also need to reevaluate the job and role transformations. So this is, as people have shifted largely to working from home, we've got to think differently about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis and how we're enabling them doing it. How are we measuring their activities? And did we enable them to collaborate with peers and also, have the right equipment to work remotely? Have we provided the right training or even change management practices to allow them to co-manage the demands of homeschooling, childcare, and elders like we talked about under the last segment? And how will we continue to monitor their performance and their health and well-being at the same time while we're putting new demands on them from home at work, right? So those are big areas of reinventing the way work is defined and what needs to be done on a day-to-day basis. Let's talk about learning and development. This really kind of fell into two parts, and this one was a very big, deep topic. It could certainly touch on all of the 11 topics we're going to discuss today. But the key themes that emerged from the research were really about providing new learning or reskilling and upskilling, sorry. Still remains one of the most significant learning and development. It still remains one of the most significant contributions to employee development and engagement and retention. Employees expect to continue to grow, and if you're not providing that, frankly, they're just going to look elsewhere for work where they can continue to grow. It's just human nature to want to continually get better at what you do. Trends highlighted here, we'll put some up, really highlighted the impact of micro-learning as the future. And this was an eye-opener for me. I hadn't thought about it this way, but by this, we're really talking about the injection of teachable moments right inside the application or the program. This eliminates the need for the user to go out and log into an LMS and enroll into a class that might not be offered for a couple weeks away, but instead is giving them like a short targeted burst of content specific to the function they're trying to perform right now that they need help with. And this is kind of like a help on demand feature, but it's really being labeled more as a micro learning moment. And we're seeing this more and more commonly in all the softwares that are hitting the market these days, and it's making a big impact. Reskilling and upskilling really speaks to the ability to identify learning gaps and make sure that you can get the right the right level of skill sets into the workforce. So everybody's maximizing their efficiency, and then also taking those gaps and looking at what we need next to get to the next level of our potential as an organization or as an individual. So those are the two big themes that kind of came out of the learning and development area.
And just from a reskilling perspective, I think again there's a deep tie to AI with this piece. So when you hear or read about how AI is changing the way people do their jobs, that whole reskilling piece is always another piece of that article or study.
Yeah, no, great add-on, Stephanie. In fact, we were starting to see a lot of AI leverage within learning management systems, so it definitely touches into this domain as well. Okay, measurement. So if we remember the slide on magnitude, and we will come back to that, this made the list. It wasn't as high as I'd expected, but it's really not something that's new to the trends. In fact, it's been implied in almost every the other 11 categories we're going to discuss today. Every aspect of a program requires understanding of the baseline metrics that come with it, so that you need to look at that from, where are we now, so we have a means to improve it. And the old adage, if you don't measure it, how do you know if you're getting better, really holds true here. The real unique portion of where measurement came into this assessment or grid of 11 services is the ability to be predictive and provide data-driven insights, which is a little bit of a departure from the conventional measures that HR tends to supply to leadership tables, which are more around just where we were or what happened. And they're asking us to take a transformation and be more predictive about the future with their measurements. So let's talk next about performance management. This is really a very broad category that not only collected all the items pertaining to proper goal management, feedback cycles, and performance review cycles, it also collected anything pertaining to morale, productivity, engagement, and turnover. And that might not be fair to put them all on PM, but that's where they ended up in this case. We did discuss the impacts of learning and development on retention engagement already, but an abundance of data already shows that the use of performance management software can increase annual revenue by 25% over those who aren't doing performance management properly or at all, right? So could you imagine taking 1/4 of your company's annual revenue and adding it back into the pipeline as an extension because you did PM well? I mean, just think that, if you connected that even to a pay for performance compensation system, you would certainly motivate a lot of people with some extra income, or you could reinvest it back into more strategic HR initiatives that could generate more for both the employees and the organization together. So lots of potential here to understand the impact of performance management. The next area, recruiting, is certainly near and dear to my heart. Stephanie and I spent the lion's share of my time in the last decade focusing largely on recruitment brand efforts. So there's lots to discuss here. And, brings me a great memory is Jim Collins in the Good to Great book. It's about getting the right people on the bus philosophy. But that was really a simplistic view of what it was like back then. And now it's more than a simple job description attracting job seekers. We need to look at how we create brand and employee value proposition to attract the right people to the right jobs and engaging them to perform at their highest. And equally important, on how to repel or keep at bay the people who just aren't going to fit into that culture. There is significant volumes of research out there right now showing how fit is equally about not just job skills, but also about cultural fit. And how do you do this so you don't set yourself up into a diversity and inclusion debt by just hiring people who are always similar to you and your managers. And this is a common occurrence that's really being well documented these days. And it really takes its foundation in the biases of old guard managers who exclude new and unique seekers from bringing fresh perspectives and innovative ideas into your organization. So there's great opportunities here to leverage AI as a strong tactic for recruiting, right, within the recruiting focus to help eliminate that bias. And so let's talk about workforce planning. Lots to discuss here. It's a really important, and this typically is transacted in most companies as a review exercise more than a planning or modeling exercise, meaning you do it at the end of the year and say, this is kind of what happened. But there's a shift now to using software to help plan these exercises. So modern workforce planning tools really can help model out a scenario to align with C-level business objectives. And give you a better understanding of the demands required by the workforce to help the organization meet those company goals. Maybe you need to invest in employee development to change existing skills or undergo a massive recruiting spree to bring in new people into the organization. Or maybe you need to leverage third parties and shift to the use of maybe contingent workers, or even just set up gig assignments to align with the growing marketplace of gig economists out there who are just doing short-term assignments. So there's lots in here that needs to be considered. And again, it touches on all aspects from learning through to recruitment through to performance management. So we're going to discuss the last category, the other category. And it ended up being a big category. There was a lot in there when we looked at the size and the magnitude of this particular item as it came across the research we were doing. We broke it into kind of 4 key areas, right? So business strategy really focuses on market-driven factors and the possibility of having HR become more of a crisis center, right? Or a crisis response unit came up frequently. And a lot of these factors we put in the other because they weren't really specific HR functions, they were more demands of HR. And so in some regards, we really toyed, and battled as a team in doing this theming with if they belonged into change HR or into an other category all of their own. And I guess they could be put in both sections. Mission was an interesting one, purpose-driven organizations. It was a sub-theme that came across a few times, but some noticeable data points on how employees can rally around a common mission goal, such as maybe charitable work or environmental initiative strategies, and these can be local or community-based or right up to global programs. This is what's becoming kind of known as the rise of the social enterprise, and I think that's a term that Deloitte uses or kind of coined in the industry. And there is definitely a series of reports coming out on how it can positively impact employee engagement and individual contributions if there are purpose-driven organizations or missions set in place. The last 2 parts of this were around fiscal. So we had budget constraints and reducing costs. And really, we're just asking HR to be more adept at working with constrained budgets or reduce costs. And finally, leadership, which definitely could have been part of the learning development theme, was also called out as a key factor. We're looking at the what we'd call decisive leadership and how people will, in times of uncertainty, which is certainly where we are right now, look at decisive leaders and follow them and engage at a better level than indecisive leaders. So that was a really big theme that kind of fell out of the other category. So that, my friends, is the 12 themes in a nutshell. Stephanie, do you want to?
Yep, sure. So thanks, Dan, for going through that. And I think it's worth sort of reiterating that not only is there overlap between the different themes, but I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, I don't really think that's part of performance management. I would classify that elsewhere. And trust me, we had the same discussions internally as we went through this exercise. So this is really where we ended up in terms of how we classified it. But there's certainly arguments to be made for things being in a different section than they are now. So what does this mean for you in terms of these trends in HR? So the answer is, unfortunately, or potentially fortunately, it really depends. And I know that that sounds like something that your mother might say, and you're not happy with that answer, but it does depend because everyone is at different stages in terms of their organizational maturity. Everyone has different corporate goals, has different products and services, different geographic locations. Many are dealing with labor shortages and other business factors. So it really does depend on your own specific situation with your organization. But obviously, we'd like to try and give you a better answer than just it depends. And so Dan is going to walk us through a prioritization exercise that will help you assess these 12 themes and the impact that they may have on your business.
Thanks, Stephanie. So, You're bang on with that. I mean, the prioritization exercise, let's come back and look at those 12 themes in order of magnitude. So just, which came up most often in our review of all the literature on HR trends. That doesn't mean this is what it's going to look like for you and your organization. As Stephanie adeptly pointed out, it's about understanding where your organization needs action right now and how these individual efforts can drive business outcomes. That's what they want, change HR. They want us to do business differently. So here's how we're going to help you along. It's a very rudimentary, but a very functional practice that can get you started with a bit of an action plan, okay? 5 steps. And I'm going to walk through a whole bunch of slides on this. Yes, somebody asked, will you get a copy of this deck? Absolutely. And in here, we're going to separate out the section leave it in actually the PowerPoint format because it's easy to work in this format, okay? So you're going to take each of the 11 items that you have, and you're going to rank them as either a high impact on your business if you did it and did it well, a medium impact, or a low impact on your business. And if one of the items that kind of fell out of the other, or something that we didn't cover as a complete section, stands out in your head as something that's going to have a really big impact on your organization's business. And I don't mean the HR's business. I mean, what does your CEO want you guys to do this year or next year? Okay. This is what we're going to start ranking. So what could we do to make this high, medium, or low? So for instance, as an example, here's the items in alphabetical order that we walked through. We're just going to put a medium, high, medium, low, and keep going through, okay? So when you're done, you'll have 11 items labeled as high, medium, or low prioritization. Now, when you think about how easy they are to implement, okay, not what has a big impact on business, but how hard is this going to be to do? I need you to do a same grading scale. We're going to think about executive buy-in, change management, software services required to support this, training and adoption. What is all this going to look like? So we're going to now have an impact on business already completed, and then we're going to add in information for its degree of difficulty, high, medium, or low. Okay?
So,
then
Dan,
at the end, we could do, sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Sorry, just to it may be obvious, but I just want to point out that, and maybe you actually addressed it, but with the 11 items, you are not including other in that because that was comprised of multiple things. So that's why we're talking about 11 items here and not the 12 that we've been speaking of previously.
No, good point. I mean, if something on the other list jumped out, it's so easy to manipulate this in PowerPoint and add another row to this table and add it in there. So it doesn't have to be 11. Okay, so on the following pages, we've done the expected cost of implementation. So don't forget to figure in things as licensing, fees, support, guidance, training, associated products or services that you might need to help them support this practice, okay? So here we've got now 3 columns, everything graded on its impact on the business, its difficulty, and its cost. And again, we're just using that low, high, medium, very gut feeling about these practices, okay? So when we're done with this, print this page, keep it for future use, just park it to the side because you're gonna wanna either use 2 monitors or just print this page and look at it. And then we're gonna start mapping these, step 4, into a 9-box grid, okay? So we're gonna give you this grid and it's gonna allow you to come in here, and I can't do it in PowerPoint mode, so I might just back out for just a second. Put this up on the deck and let's make that a lot bigger for us. You'll see that as you type into these items, we've got a 9-box for difficulty of implementation over the business impact, a 9-box for business impact over the cost of the implementation. And if we start plotting these things out based off of that step 3 that allowed us to grade everything, you can see we can just add these filters in. And as we start adding new items, the boxes will shift in size accordingly, but they still stay within the relative scale. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to PowerPoint presentation mode here. You'll see that as we add these items in based on your rankings, it starts to lay out a framework of, gee, where is the best bang for our buck, which are the green squares to the upper right? What's going to be really difficult to do that probably doesn't drive much of a business impact? Again, these are all examples. This is not me assuming this, and this is going to be so unique and specific to each one of you that your maps are going to look completely different. Trust me. Okay. So last of these steps, once you've got those 9-box grids done and you've got everything mapped out and you can kind of see a visualization of where you need to go, pick an item that creates a big impact on the business that's easy to implement, right? Should be an easy win where HR leaders, C-level executives, and the employees are probably all going to be on site and asking for this. So then define the opportunity in terms of what I call the 3 Ps to make this happen. What are the people needs, the process needs, and the platform needs? And then finally, how are we going to measure this? I don't want a full doctoral dissertation, but just a couple bullets. So an example might be establish daily performance activities for each division that drives goals. So we know what the corporate goals are. So what do we need the employees in that division to do? We need to work with unit leaders to define that work. We need to process. So we got to collect skills and competencies as key indicators of performance. The platform needs, we might need a competency library and skills definitions. We might even need a performance management system if we don't have one. Then what are we going to do? We're going to look at unit-based metrics, support calls, production increases, or sales cycles, etc., to see how these activities change those outcomes for our business leaders. Okay, so we'll give you this example, slide 2. So I know this was kind of a quick and easy 5-step process. It is very simple, but very, very effective. Taking these things, a team through an exercise like this to collaborate on your thoughts, and then maybe doing it as a work session with a few of your colleagues in HR is a really sound strategy to get yourselves on the right page and understanding or coming to a common consensus of what needs to do, and then enables you with documentation that's simple and short on how you can make a business change that connects at the C-level. Okay. Stephanie, can we pass it back to you for next steps and questions?
Sure, absolutely. So thank you again. We're just going to sort of finish up by talking about the next steps and going through any remaining questions that come up. So at HR Strategies Consulting, we understand HR, not just technology. So we can provide technology and our strategies around each of these themes. But as we've indicated numerous times, every company is unique and is trying to overcome their own specific set of business challenges. So we'd love to speak to you more about those challenges and how we might be able to help. You know, it may be as simple as just us sharing this deck with you, which we do plan on doing, so that you can complete your own prioritization exercise on your own. We are also happy to share the research list of the resources that we reviewed. We can set up some time to go through the prioritization exercise together if you want us to walk you through that. Or we can set up some time to go through what you and your own specific organization are facing in terms of business challenges, and to learn more about us and what we may be able to provide. So Dan, do you have any sort of final thoughts before we wrap up with questions?
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, in hindsight, I mean, looking at these themes and saying we got to do what everybody else is doing is the wrong approach. The real approach here is to understand what themes are happening so that you can kind of assess, are we there yet or not there? Is that going to make a difference for us? And then applying this kind of 9-box methodology to it will help localize those trends against what your business would benefit from best. So it really is an individual approach, not a keeping up with the Joneses case.
Okay, great, thank you. So as you can see, our contact information is here. And before we get to the questions, I also just want to draw your attention to some upcoming events that we have. Our next series is going to be around applying to onboarding. So part 1 will take a look at the candidate perspective in terms of creating agile candidate experiences. And then part 2 is really going to be looking at that more from the employer or organization side. And so that's in March. So you can register for those at our website. And let's just see if there are any more questions. So yes, there's a question about receiving a copy of the 5 steps. That will be included in the deck that we send out. And I think the exercise is exciting to Alan Wong. And so that's something that you can look forward to doing on your own once we send it out to everyone. So I think of the additional questions that I see here, I think we have answered everything. So I think, again, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. And thanks again, Dan, for going through that with us. And we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.
We'll stay on the line a little bit for Steph in case there are additional questions, maybe.
Oh, sure. And I do see another one about getting a copy of the deck. Yes, that will come later this week. So I think that is about it. So thank you again, and have a nice day.
Thanks all.